G'day everyone, welcome to the channel. The first video I've made in a little while, and back on the Panasonic camera now. I don't know what you all thought of the fishing video. Be interesting to see some comments on that, see what you thought of the quality. It was a very simple video, but anyway, we're back on the proper gear now. Went down to BCF this morning and bought this beastie that you can see in front of me here. It's a kayak, a fishing kayak. The Pryml Titan is the model, and I'll stick the specs up on the screen now so you can have a look at what comes with it and what the specifications are. Just about to pull all the wrapping off it and see what's in here. Now, we've been trying to get a kayak for quite a few weeks now, and looking at different models that are around the place and different sellers. We first went to a mob called Kayaks to Fish, who advertised having a location in Perth up near Bibra Lake. Drove up there one day and hoping to talk to somebody about what we would need, what the styles of kayak are, what's the best one to get. Nobody there had the faintest idea about anything. The location they had in Perth is just a storage shed being managed by some other company. Nobody to talk to, no useful information, and what's more important, virtually no stock. So that was a complete waste of time. We had a look at BCF, and eventually they came up with a Pryml Titan that looked like an interesting kayak. That's this one. And we wanted to get one of those from them. Advertised at the time for $699 member price. Rockingham, our local store, didn't have any stock. We inquired about whether it was possible to bring one down from another store, and to be honest, they just were not the slightest bit interested. Oh, it's too big, too expensive. If you want it, you have to go to Osborne Park. Well, I didn't want it that much, so we put it on hold again. And just 2 days ago, we saw them advertised yet again, rang the Rockingham store, and yes, they finally had one in stock. We rushed down the next day, grabbed it, brought it home, and the first thing we find is there's no adjustable rod holder in there. Playing around with it a bit more, we find there's a problem with one of the foot pedals. I'll go into that in a minute. And also the metal pin and the washer that's supposed to hold the rudder in place are missing. Not terribly happy with this situation, so we ring the store and say, hey guys, you know, it's a fishing kayak, it's got no rod holder, or at least no forward rod holder. It's got the two fixed ones in the back, but they're useless when you're fishing. Can we get one for the kayak? And the reply was no. We don't stock them. So they've offered us a refund, but I look online and I find that these rail-mounted rod holders are not easy to get. So at this stage I'm just not sure what we're going to do. Now, as you will have seen earlier in the video, when we got the kayak, the rod holder here that should have been with the package was missing. And at the time I phoned up BCF, they didn't have any in stock, and they were originally going to refund me $100, which would have been fine, would have enabled me to buy another one easily. I guess they're about $30 each. But by the time I got down to the store on Tuesday to sort it out, they'd had another batch come in. So the result is this thing here. It's a little bit on the wobbly side, I guess. Seems a little bit on the wobbly side. I don't know how tight they are meant to be, but I've had to use different bolts in it. That's the only thing. The bolts they give with it are M5. The nut that's in the rail to attach to the bolts is an M6. So they should have had M6 bolts to go into that. Thankfully I've got them in the workshop, so that wasn't a really big problem. You have to have hex nut style bolts, simply because of this mounting is curved and you wouldn't successfully get a spanner or anything on there, so you need to have an Allen key and do it up. I'm not quite sure if this should remain sliding or whether it needs to be tightened into one place. Maybe that's why it's a little bit loose, but for the moment I'm going to just leave it in a sliding position. It may be more useful to have as a sliding rod mount than one that's fixed in a position that I'm not certain I'm going to want yet. So I'll leave that for a little while, see what happens. It's not really pulling the nuts up tight against the bottom of that. Anyway, yeah, that's be that as it may. But at least we did get that sorted out, and finding that you haven't got a rod holder in the package when you get it, and then being told that they can't get you one is a bit irritating. So thankfully when I went there they had got some in. Now this is a Pryml rod mount, okay, and this is a Pryml canoe, and on the package for the rod mount it says it is for Pryml slides. Why they would supply an M5 bolt for an M6 nut, I have no idea. Maybe BCF can get onto the makers of these Pryml kayaks and get that sorted out, because it's going to piss off a lot of people, I think. Now on the way down to BCF, because at that time I had no idea that we were going to get a replacement mount, we got this little fellow over here from Anaconda. $30, a different kind of mount. You need to bolt it on, and I've chosen to put that one right on the top of the hatch here. It's reasonably steady. None of these are going to stand up to any kind of really serious fish grabbing hold of it, but then your drag should be set correctly and your rod should act as a shock absorber. But in our dinghy we have had a rod mount with 6 rivets in it ripped off when a big fish grabbed hold of a big line and took off like a rocket. So there's always the possibility for a bit of damage if something grabs these and your drag's not set right. Okay, so looking through the compartments, and we'll just tilt the camera up. Zippo in that one. The seals on these feel like they're quite nice. And the front compartment, which is where BCF say the rod holder should have been, also Zippo. Now anyone who's seen my videos and is going to know that I'm certainly a bit of a heavyweight. So this is rated to carry 160 kilos, I believe, so it should be more than enough, even when I add a battery and some accessories to it. Now we've got some accessories to this, and also going to be having a look at those shortly. Now it's time to investigate what comes with the kayak and see how it all goes together. Now I'll just work my way from the front to the back. We have a handle there on the front to make it easy to move. Behind that we have a sealed hatch. We'll see how well sealed that is when we get out on the water. Coming back down we have a central compartment, looks like a drink holder on top. The hole in front there, I'm guessing, is to help mount an echo sander of some sort, because there looks like there's some kind of area underneath there to mount a transducer. On the side there you can see the foot pedals. That's for the rudder system. That would be quite useful when you're paddling, because you can just paddle away and use your rudder to steer. You've got a couple of rail mounts, one each side. That's for putting the adjustable rod holders. Now behind here we have the seat. We have a little strap holder on the side here for the paddle. So that will keep the paddle in place when you're fishing and keep it out of your way. Behind the seat we have what is obviously a battery compartment. We're going to be needing that because we have a Watersnake electric motor we're going to be mounting up on this. We have 2 static rod holders there, and a fairly large compartment in the back here where we will be putting some kind of waterproof container to put the fishing gear, bucket, whatever we decide to put in there. And of course on the back here there's the rudder system, and that is the next thing I will be investigating, and we'll put that on and see how easy it is to put onto the back of the kayak. Okay, problem number 2 we've come across with this kayak is with the steering system. Now you can see down in here you have a spring. The spring is what you'll use to load the pedal up, and you'll see I've had to bend this one across the top of the bottom pedal. This one's your footrest, and this one here is what you're going to adjust your rudder with. Now what was happening with this, when this little pin here on the end of the spring was straight, when I brought it up here it would actually flick through underneath and you would have no spring at all. Whereas on the other pedal, for some reason, the setup is exactly the same, and yet no problems at all with that one. So it's only a minor adjustment, which is just bending this pin over the top here. Not enough so it's going to stick into your foot when you put your foot there, but just enough so it catches and stops it from flicking away as you're using the spring under tension here. So doing the rudder doesn't seem to be too complex, it's just a matter of tightening these cords up. Now I think the rudder system on these things is another thing that's going to be a bit dodgy. It's relying on these very thin cords. Now I don't know how strong these are going to be, but they're running into some very sharp little holes, and you wonder, after that's been in salt water for a while, how well they're going to do. That's your footrest, and you push down on the top piece, and as you push down on the top piece and let go, the rudder will turn and then centre. Now these are very tight, they don't move smoothly, at all, and I can see trouble in the future with these things. I really wonder how good they're going to be, but again, I am looking for trouble where there may not be any, but I tend to usually be right about this sort of stuff. And this is the rudder in the down position. Now the way that's held down is with a cord that runs along the side of the canoe. I keep calling it a canoe, it's a kayak. It's a habit, I suppose. I'm not used to calling things kayaks. And the cord is the one with a red ball on the end. Assume so you can find it. And that just sits into a slot on the side. You pull that out, don't let it go because the rudder will then flick back of its own accord, but let it go slowly and your rudder flicks back over. So you're going to want to do that when you get into shallow areas. You can see there, by moving the cord, you can adjust the rudder in and out a bit. Most of the time you're going to want it more or less straight down to have the most effect. And the little locking mechanism is up here. I wonder if the way that's done it's going to wear the cord out at some stage. It probably will. You can imagine the friction on that, time after time after time, gradually wearing that part of the cord away. We'll see how it goes. I shouldn't be too quick to judge, but it seems fairly obvious that at some stage that cord will wear thin and you're going to have to replace it. Obviously all these things, bungee cords, etc., they're all going to wear out after a certain length of time. But in general, when you're not using the kayak, it's obviously going to be good to keep it wrapped up and well out of the sun. So yeah, I've got to say, initial impression, average. I don't like buying a brand new product that's got bits missing. Now there's a pin and a washer missing off the bottom of the rudder. That's not a terribly big deal. I can find something stainless steel to shove in there myself, but again, you know, this is $750 worth of kayak. I expect it all to be there, all the bits that are supposed to be there, in place when I buy it. People don't cough up money to buy a product that doesn't have pieces that should be there and doesn't work. So it's going to be interesting to see how this goes and how the reviews of it go with our first trip, but we are going to use it within the next couple of weeks, so that will come very shortly in another video, and we'll let you know what our opinion of this thing is. Now the next thing I want to have a look at are the accessories we got with this. So accessory number one for a kayak is a little folding trolley that makes it a lot easier for one person to transport on their own. The wheels come off this very simply, but I'll drag it over here now and we'll have a look at how it goes. Okay, so the straps go around underneath the two aluminium supports. You've got the little leg there that now gets tucked away. And theoretically that's fairly stable, and we'll see how it goes. We'll just give it a little test around the back garden, see how well that stays on. I've got a feeling you're probably going to need to readjust these straps from time to time. I doubt it'll stay tight like that all the time, but yeah, I guess not too bad. I'm not sure how these little wheels are going to go in sand though. Looking at the size of the wheels, they may tend to dig in a bit. They're fairly flat at the moment, there's not much air in them, but you're really not going to want those to be pumped up too hard either, I don't think. Now, I had some difficulty working out how on earth I was going to mount this bracket for the motor. There's no proper instructions on the internet, there's nothing available anywhere that tells you how to do this. This is a pretty important step. What you've got to do is get behind the plate here and put this little bar on and then put your bolts in. Now of course you have to be able to get inside the kayak to do that. And the only hole I can find are these rod mounts. So you take your rod mounts out, unscrew that, and it should just give enough room to get your fingers in and get this behind that mount and then put the bolts through. Now if you can see what I've done here is tie on a piece of fishing line, because if you drop that fella in there you're going to have a lot of fun getting it back out again. So we'll stick fishing line on one end. We'll get the far end bolted on first, then we'll pull the fishing line off because it's not too tightly tied on, and bolt the other end in. Let's see how we go. First thing we've got to do is mark where we're going to drill the holes. And now we say a bit of a prayer that we don't screw this all up, because obviously you're going to avoid your warranty if you do. Those are drilled in, just reconfirm those markings. Always worthwhile rechecking your markings once you've drilled your first two holes, because you might just be a teeny bit out. These things can always move a little bit while you're marking them out in the first place, so just reconfirm that once you've drilled your first two holes. The nut needs to be on the bottom of this, or otherwise it's just going to pull out. So they need to be that way up inside. Okay, just confirm that that is attached. And we can remove the fishing line, we hope. So that's number 1 in place. Now this is an incredibly fiddly job. Getting your fingers around under there and holding the little strips of plastic that go between these nuts is fairly difficult. This end you can get on fairly easily, but when it comes to these ends, oh boy, very, very difficult. I dropped one nut in there, still in there somewhere rattling around. There's not much I can do about that. We'll go after it with a magnet eventually. If it's a ferrous nut, it may not be, I'm not sure. But I did get a second one on there, but this is at a slight angle. It may be just to do with the angle of the plastic underneath here. So it was extraordinarily difficult to get this one on. And because it's at an angle, it's not actually sitting flush inside the plastic mount that's supposed to stop it from turning. So at the moment it's turning round and round, and it's proving very difficult to get anything in there to hold that nut while we do it up. So we're going to give that one last try, but in general that's now a pretty solid mount. I think what you're going to have to do from time to time is check these nuts, or check these nuts and bolts, and retighten them every now and again, because they don't have any nylock on there, they don't have a spring washer, so over time I'm suspecting they will gradually come loose. So every time you take it out and bring it back, I reckon just run the screwdriver on those just to make sure they're nipped up to where they should be. Another adjustment you're going to have to be very careful of is this central bolt. The nut for that is in the middle of this. So if you unwind that too far, or if you allow it to come loose and the nut drops off in there, you're going to have to take this whole thing off again to do it, and you don't want to do that. That is a pain in the bum. So be very, very careful when you adjust this, because you need to move this and just get it in exactly the right position, and then tighten it right up. So the next stage is to put these on. They are going to hold the pole that holds the motor. They slip onto the side of this and they become adjustable. Okay, so the side adjustment bolts here allow you to turn it. What you want to do is have it 90 degrees to the kayak side. Just tighten those up a little bit and loosen these ones off, and then the motor will slide into here. We'll tighten those up, whack the fishing rod holder back in, and that's pretty much the job done. And finally, after quite a lot of fiddling, that is the electric motor fitted onto a Pryml Titan kayak. And the last part of this job is to just pop the rod holder back in place. And that fiddly little job is how you mount the Watersnake electric engine onto a Pryml Titan kayak. And with a little bit of fiddling of the adjusters on the holder there, you can actually swing the engine up out of the way. So if you want to launch it and make life a little easy while you're wheeling it around, so you don't have to take the engine separately down to the beach and hook it up, that's probably the best way of doing that. The clips that come with the motor are alligator type clips like these. This is actually from the solar panel, but the motor has the similar sort of clips. I don't like them, and I'm going to have to change those for something that I can actually bolt on. I don't like things that are just sitting like that. Really not a very good idea, I don't think. Now another thing I note that we may need for this is some kind of strap or some kind of bar that goes across the top there, because if this fella turns upside down for any reason at any time, battery is going to go straight to the bottom of whatever water we're sitting in. So that's going to be a fairly important thing. I would imagine having a metal bar across there is going to be the best option, just something that's going to be screwed in both ends, and that should keep the battery in place. Unfortunately, because we're not set up for lithium, this is a new AGM battery. It's only 38 amp hour, was it? 38, 36 amp hour? I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll have to pull it out again and have a look at the labelling. And I haven't looked at the draw of the motor yet, so it's possible actually to set two of those side by side if I need to, but they're 10 kilos each, so that would add a fair bit of weight. I really don't want to add too much weight to the kayak. With me on top of it, the poor thing is already going to be suffering enough.